Bob, take it away.
Okay. We have representatives for 4 of the candidates here. We're about to have a 5th candidate representative. We have Roger Dean representing Michael Jingosian. We have Chris representing Mike Gravel. We have Mary Ruart. And we have this guy, George Philly. And we have Larry. Mark Schreiber.
Last but not least,
will be, let's see, there's one more chair. If we all scoot down one, we might be able to fit. Are we good? All right, do whatever you want to. It's a free country. More here than some places. Okay.
not anymore.
I'll be on the edge.
And Mark Schreiber is standing in for Wayne Root. Okay, I will make the brief opening statement. Since nobody else volunteered to do this, I'm doing it, and I'm fixing things I don't like in other debates. And here's how we're going to do this. You guys have sent me questions. There have been a bunch of duplicates. I'm going to kind of paraphrase this and pass things to candidates. I'm not going to duck into the tough questions. However, this is not anything but a presentation of ideas. We're not going to have an argument in here about any subject. If you have something to say about a subject, take it outside. I've got enough friends in here to make sure that happens. Each of the candidates is going to answer each question, except for a couple of questions that are candidate specific. We're going to rotate around in various ways, and I'll just call people so that everybody isn't always answering first or last. At the close of the 50 minutes that we're going to allow for this, we're going to give 3 of the candidates an opportunity for 3 minutes of individual statement. They can talk about something they didn't have enough time to talk about. They can talk about their grandkids. They can make a campaign contribution request. I don't care. They're 3 minutes. They're going to have up to a minute to speak, and then Cindy and I are going to collectively cut them off. Okay. Now, Daniel Imperato is not here, so I can skip the question about his credentials. Okay. All right. We'll start with an easy one, and we'll start with Chris. And that is, how do you feel about universal health care?
Well, I'm very glad you asked that question, rather. There has been a lot of misinformation out there that Senator Gravel supports a single-payer government health care system. That is absolutely false. He does not. His plan calls for increased competition to specifically try to lower administrative costs, which are a huge chunk of the health care burden. Now, I will defer the details of the plan until when the senator arrives. He'll be here within a couple hours, and he can give you details. You can also look. There's some brochures on the back table by the lunch, as well as the senator's book. Just want to reiterate one more time, the senator does not support universal single-payer government health care.
Bob, could I ask the candidates to stand up if they don't mind while they're speaking to project further in the back of the room?
Fine. Okay.
I'm going to defer.
Now, Mark,
No.
Wayne Root.
We didn't even invite you, did we?
Nobody invited you, Sam.
No, Wayne's firmly in the free market corner on this thing, and oh, I told Sam I didn't want to.
You got to have voters there.
Well, it's the story of my life. But no, Wayne is firmly in the free market side of things. He's not at all for any kind of universal health care system. We haven't done a policy paper on it just yet, but I think I can safely say that's where he is. That answers your question. We'll
Yes.
just keep it moving.
Okay. Roger, for Michael Jingosian.
First of all, thanks for everybody. This is great. Great turnout. Cindy, great job. Rebecca, amazing job. Thank you very much. And Bob. And Mike as well. Free market, as we all know. Competition makes everything better. Competition makes everything stronger and gives the customers or the patients the best solution. There you go.
Okay, George?
Fellow libertarians, I am... What can I say? Now I've got two of them. Fellow libertarians, I am firmly in favor of the notion that every American should be able to afford real private medical care, not government medical care like they give our veterans at Walter Reed Hospital. How do we do that? We eliminate cost transfers. If you go to a hospital, your insurance should pay for your medical care costs and not the people who show up at the emergency room without medical care insurance. That's the opposite of what we do now. And I am happy to go on with other things. Allow European drugs into the country safely, allow interstate competition, equal tax treatment for all medical care costs. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mary.
Universal health care means health care rationing, especially for our seniors. We have people coming over from Canada all the time to the northern states so that they do not have to wait 2 years for a cardiac bypass that will save their lives. Now, in order to lower health care costs in this country, the only way to do it is to get rid of the regulations that have increased it so much. In the pharmaceutical area, which I've worked in for many, many years, about 80% of the cost of new drugs are due to regulations that hurt us instead of help us. In fact, they increased the development time from 4.5 years to 14.5 years, which means people die waiting for life-saving drugs. Courts have recently ruled that we, if we are dying, have no right to buy from the pharmaceutical firm a drug that has only been in animals and a little bit in people. No, we must die waiting for life-saving drugs. And if I am elected, that will change. Thank you.
Okay. The next question has to do with Iraq. I realize there's more things going on in that part of the world, but this particular one deals with Iraq. What do you feel we should do militarily with the situation as it stands now in Iraq? And if you believe it should be brought to a military conclusion, what do you think we should do in support of the Iraqis after any military cessation of hostilities? Now, we're going to go with Mary and rotate the other way. So, Mary?
I would like to bring our troops home just as soon as it's possible to do so safely. And I would turn to military advisors to help me design the right way to do that. As far as giving aid to the Iraqis after our withdrawal, I think that should be up to individual American citizens. I don't think the federal government has any business taxing the American people to give foreign aid overseas. However, I think that if an American citizen feels strongly about helping a particular country, that he or she should be free to do so. I would also bring the troops home from Japan, from Europe. And because, you know, when you think about it, these young men and women have offered to lay down their lives for us. All they ask is that we don't put them in harm's way unnecessarily. So we really need to get them out of the Iraqi Vietnam.
George?
There is only one best time to end the war in Iraq. Already. Really. Yes, people can say, isn't it dangerous to move troops out fairly quickly? Answer, we're getting our troops killed every day. We're killing Iraqis every day. The best way to end the danger is to move the troops out. As Commander-in-Chief, I will tell the Army, Navy, Air Force, we are moving out of Iraq. We want to be out in 3 months or less to Kuwait. I realize there are then shipping issues getting stuff loaded on ships. That's actually a huge issue, not a small issue. There are big trucking issues getting vast tonnages of supply out. 3 months out of Iraq, another 3 months home, and if the generals get a case of the camps, we can't do that. I'll Lincolnize them. Lincoln had to go through a lot of generals before he got some good ones, and I'm prepared to do the same.
Okay. Roger?
Thank you. Same thing. Get out now. and there's a lot of ways to do that. And as far as specifics go, I'll wait. I'll force you all to wait till the debate tonight for Mike to elucidate on that.
Okay, Mark?
Well, there's been a lot of controversy about Wayne's position on the war, and we have a draft of our manifesto. We call it War and Peace, just for the fun of it. But the bottom line is it's a serious issue, and Wayne has put an enormous amount of thought into it. And to simplify it, in his absence, and because we haven't published it yet, we will demand immediate withdrawal and withdrawal from the other parts of the world and foreign aid, including Israel, okay? But the key is you can't just pull out. Now, I was a logistician in the Army. I was a movements officer for Schwarzkopf. Bottom line is it takes a lot more than just time and material to get people out of a combat zone. You also have a lot of people left in the Iraqi civilian population that have supported us. We have to have mechanisms for protecting them.
Chris?
Okay, well, Senator Gravel's proposal has, his position on it has remained clear and consistent. An organized and immediate withdrawal, 120 days after he would become president, the troops would be out of Iraq. Reconstruction would need to be turned over to the Iraqi people. You must empower the Iraqi people to rebuild their own nation. In addition, while, yes, you just made a great point, that's not all that there is to it. You have to engage in diplomacy, and Senator Gravel would engage in very active diplomacy all around the Middle East region. But first and foremost, with regard to Iraq, within 120 days of a Gravel presidency, the troops would be out of Iraq. End of story.
Okay. Mark, speaking for Wayne Root, and this is for Melanie Hughes. What are Wayne's plans, or actually it's the candidate's plans, to attract women and minorities to the Libertarian Party as part of the campaign?
Well, first is he's a good-looking guy. And he's getting a great deal of publicity. Obviously, that's why I'm here today. He's in New York, and he's been on Fox Business yesterday morning, and they asked him to come back that evening to do another show, and he's getting profiled in Time Magazine. We've already had that interview. So there's a number of things that are going on that he's going to be very broadly exposed, and I think a lot of people are going to find him attractive, not just in a jovial way. But for minorities, he's done something that's unprecedented, I think, for a libertarian. He's got the light heavyweight champion of the world endorsing him. And the Clinton's people had asked him if he would endorse Clinton. So it is an opening. But specifically, we're just trying to get the message out. And we think that it's going to be very attractive to an awful lot of people.
Time. Roger, for Michael Jingosian.
Thank you. Mark brought up a good point. It's not how we attract women and minorities. It's everybody that lives in America is fed up with the way things are going. If you were able to ask them, like I'm talking to you guys right now, do you like this, that, or another thing, and where do you think the change lies? It lies with them. So we're trying to create a movement, an initiative that gives them, everybody, belief in not only us, but the Libertarian Party and change. So we're looking for patriots, and I think men, women, children, minorities, all will apply.
George?
How do we attract women? How do we attract minorities? We take stands that show we are here for all Americans. That's why I've taken the stand. I'm 100% pro-choice. Large lure for vast numbers of young women who can't stand the Republican Party. I've taken the stand we should have equality for all in marriage, adoption, and all sorts of civil liberties. That's why I'm the endorsed candidate of outright libertarians, the Libertarian GLBT group, because I've actually spoken up. I've spoken up for equal access, protecting Americans of minority religions. I spoke out and denounced the Republican scheme to use the Army to campaign against practitioners of Wicca, one of our minority religions. That included Congressman Bob Barr when he was out there. And I've done that because equality under the law is something we can promise, protection for minorities.
Mary?
The best way to attract women to the Libertarian Party in this particular election cycle is to run a woman as the Congress ticket. I have had Libertarian women come up to me and say, I hate Hillary, but I'm going to hold my nose and vote for her if she gets the nomination because I so much want to vote for a woman. If we're getting that reaction from Libertarian women, we're going to be getting a bigger reaction, I believe, from the American public. So I think that that's one thing we might consider in this election cycle is to change the face of the Libertarian Party. Now, as far as minorities, when I first put out Healing Our World in 1992 and the more recent edition in 2003, I was on a number of black radio shows. And I can tell you it was quite a challenge because there's an entitlement mentality going on in the black community. But by showing the statistics and the different things in the Healing Our World which show that blacks are helped by liberty, I got a great response. And I intend to target that group as well in this election.
Okay.
Well, it's already been mentioned here previously that, yes, we need to attract women and minorities, but we need to attract all people, all Americans who hold libertarian ideals. And I've got to put forth, there's probably a lot more people in the state of Indiana than those who are in this room right now who believe that the government should be out of your wallet, out of your bedroom, et cetera, et cetera. And the question you have to ask is what candidate has the ability to bring more people into the Libertarian Party? And I would put forth that Senator Gravel is that candidate. Consider the address. It's Senator Gravel. It's not City Councilman Gravel. It's not Congressman Gravel. It's Senator Gravel. That gives instant credibility. Also, yes, he was formerly a Democrat. Democrats didn't like him very much, but nonetheless he was. So that brings people from that side of the aisle who are very disenfranchised with the choices that remain. You could bring those into the Libertarian Party as well without compromising our libertarian ideals. And I would put forth once again Senator Gravel is the candidate to grow the Libertarian Party.
Okay. Next question, we'll start with Chris. We'll go the other way. What is Mike's position on immigration and specifically the problems of illegal immigration in this country?
I am going to, because we have not yet put out a full position paper on this, I'm going to have to defer to the Senator when he gets in the next 3 hours.
Absolutely. Okay,
Are you going this way?
we're going this way.
Never mind.
No, me? Okay.
Just kidding.
Well, I think that peaceful people should be able to cross borders at will, but I do understand that the American people are very afraid of that because they're afraid that their jobs are going to be taken away or there's going to be security concerns. But if we decrease government spending, drastically slash it, we'll have a lot of job creation because every regulator destroys about 150 jobs per year in the private sector. So if we slash government spending, have more jobs, we'll be begging people to come in and help us. And as far as security goes, we've already had that problem. 9/11 terrorist, Mohammed Atta, was in the United States. He got in on an expired visa, which he had violated the terms of by taking flight lessons. Did our immigration officials track him down? No. They were too busy trying to stop peaceful Mexican farm workers from coming over the border. What we should do is allow people to come in if they do not have a criminal record or do not pose a threat to us so that we have the resources to find the few who are a threat and make sure they don't come.
George?
Immigration is the great strength of America. What should we do about immigration? We should eliminate the racist quotas that set one rule for people from one country, another rule for people from another country. We should expand student visas because every student who comes here and goes home is an apostle for liberty, is a champion for why America is a wonderful place to be. With respect to American concerns about open borders, let's be realistic. In my opinion, you cannot have open borders and a welfare system at the same time. You will go broke. And that welfare system is not just free medical care, it's free schools, free roads, water systems that were built by past generations of taxpayers. We should continue to welcome immigrants be delighted to see them. We should continue to bring people in because it's the strength of America, but we cannot do open borders.
Time. Roger or Mike? Who goes in?
Thank you. And I agree with, I think we all have the same ideals here in regards to open borders, but have a way to allow free and open access, but end the incentive programs. Find a way to, obviously we can't end them tomorrow, but they've got to end. End the incentive programs and make the incentive of coming to America the right to work, just like we all look for and try to do every day.
And Mark? Or
This is one we haven't talked a lot about, but the bottom line is he feels that there's a necessity to make sure who's coming into the country is the right kind of person, in the sense of not a criminal, not carrying disease and that sort of stuff. But our main difference between these folks and our campaign is we don't think the small business community ought to be burdened with the enforcement of any immigration laws. I mean, those jobs are there for a reason, and they're going begging for people to come in and take these jobs. So if we get rid of the entitlements, we get rid of the cost of government and everything else, I think the small business community is going to breathe a sigh of relief that they're not running afoul of some bureaucrat or some law enforcement agent that's going to walk in and say, oh, did you know? It's not their job to figure it out. It's the government's job if it's anybody's job. Okay.
all right. The Libertarian Party, by its very nature, has a lot of issues that simply cannot be appropriately addressed with a soundbite. Everybody knows that we're all heroin addicts. Well, ain't true. Point is, most of us actually disapprove of recreational drugs. It's just we don't feel like throwing people in prison. Every year, or every election cycle, we get grief from various people for issues, be it national defense, be it recreational drugs, be it trying to eliminate welfare and Social Security. Well, this year it's one that's been with us for a long time. It's on the platform. It has to do with the appropriate balance between children's rights, and children have rights, and protecting children in a free society, and the correct place for the various levels of society. And unfortunately, the way it's come up is that our positions, since they don't work very well in sound bites, have caused certain people to question whether or not these issues should be eliminated from party consideration, that it's inappropriate in various ways, or people that don't toe the mainstream line should seriously consider removing themselves from the party. So with that kind of open-ended thing, I'm going to ask our 5 candidates to address this issue, and I'm sure they're all familiar with the issue. And if you're not familiar with the issue, you could read our national, our previous national platform, or various other publications that talk about this. But remember, the story is one of these complex things that is bigger than the soundbite. Okay, we're going to start with...
Can I ask a question about your question?
Yes.
Are you asking us to address...
I will ask a specific question. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Okay, the specific question is, I would like to find out if you think that our current positions of various candidates make it, essentially poison the party, essentially make it too difficult for local candidates to run, if in fact, or if you think that the party should seriously modify its stance on this to make it more presentable to the soundbite public. I'm going to start with Roger Dean on this. Just say whatever you want.
I'm not bear with me here. So what I think you're saying... Yeah, hold on. What I think you're saying is, should the LNC or the Libertarian Party modify stances or approaches that politicians, potential candidates stand for?
It's a little. I figured all you guys were familiar with the issue.
Well, I am. I just want to.
Excuse me, I'm not familiar with the issue at all. Just could you blurt it out and just be rude?
Okay, the blurt out is that our people have interpreted our platform our national platform, especially the previous one, I don't know which version we're on, as supporting child pornography.
Okay.
Oh.
All right? Now, our platform doesn't actually say that. It doesn't actually say that. It mainly says things like, well, if you don't want to live with your parents, you can go live somewhere else, and that's your right to decide, even if you're not old enough to move out.
They get the idea now.
And I think that's one issue. Others are, like you said, others are in reference to drugs. Stances, we're stereotyped and marginalized because of, they believe in heroin for everybody, pot for everybody, whatever the case might be, along with, other potentially child pornography references as well. And fundamentally, what it comes down to is education. It is creating a system that allows people to be free, where it gets the government out of our wallets, out of our bedrooms, out of our lives, and let us run our lives, to which is forcing us to become more and more the patriots that caused the change anyway. So anything that allows us to do that is what the Libertarian Party and every other logical-based party should do, if that makes any sense. I hope. So I'm curious to see what the rest of how they do. Yeah, as much as the question.
You like to this issue? You spoke on it last night.
Let me take this from the top. Number one, you remember Obama and Reverend Wright? Obama gave this speech. Big, complicated paragraphs. You had to appreciate the whole thing. Totally politically successful. The American people do not need to be fed sound bites, at least not anymore. Point two, there was a question about children. Everyone has rights, but some people have a diminished capacity to exercise them. That's why we have age of consent laws. Of course, age of consent ranges from 18 in some states to 14 in at least one other, but that's why we have age of consent laws. Point three, I categorically condemn what I believe to be the authentic call from Wayne Root that one of my fellow candidates, Mary Ruart here, should withdraw. I know there's an allegation on Politics One that I endorsed it, and that allegation is totally false. We should settle these issues at the convention.
Mary, your turn.
Children forced to participate in sexual acts have the same rights and recourse as any rape victim. We can and should prosecute their oppressors. And as much as I'm against child pornography, I'm a grandmother after all, I know that banning it just doesn't work. Bans drive the child pornography market underground, where profits soar and criminals abound. That's why thousands of children are kidnapped each year and forced into sexual slavery. In states where prostitution has been banned, prostitutes have no recourse if they're exploited and abused. But in states, in Nevada, for example, where it's legal, exploitation and abuse is minimized. We can limit the abuse of children in the child pornography trade by ending its prohibition. We can't end child pornography any more than we can end prostitution, gambling, or drug use. Utopia is not an option, but liberty does make a bad situation worse. A bit better, I'm sorry.
We do.
Liberty makes a bad situation better.
Okay, Chris?
Once again, I'm going to have to defer to the Senator, but I would like to say I respect very much Dr. Faley's comments, and I would also, on a personal level, say that this is something that needs to be settled at the convention.
Okay. Mark, hopefully the way
Well, since I'm the campaign manager that put it up, that she should step aside. I'll articulate it as best I can while maintaining some composure. An adult approaching a child has absolutely zero rights to ask that child to engage in any kind of sexual activity. And if this party doesn't understand that, then you're no longer a party. You're no longer a viable philosophical theory. Because a child wants to please, a child is innocent of understanding the consequences of their actions, and she says in her book, and this is what prompted it, and we didn't discover it because it doesn't help our campaign at all. We're not going to get any of her supporters, okay? But the bottom line is, she says a contract exists, And there's no wiggle room. I got the book. I spent $100 to get it the next morning to find out if there was any wiggle room in that. She's not a typical candidate. She's the spinmeister for the party and the libertarian philosophy. And that isn't it. And there isn't a person in America that's going to support us if we tolerate that thought, let alone endorse it. And by having her as a candidate, and God forbid she gets the nomination, endorsing it, that pedophilia is okay, it doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me. That's anarchist, not libertarian.
Time.
She should have a rebuttal to that.
And I think that we're doing a 3-minute presentation in this format, in this forum. We're going to do 3 minutes now and 3 minutes in the evening with different people. I believe that Mary has chosen to make her statement this evening. Is that correct?
I may change my mind on that.
Well, you've got a while to change your mind here. Okay. Let's get to something a little bit more straightforward. That was okay. Mark. What are the plans for perhaps reducing the tremendous growth over the last few years of security agents and the number of armed federal agents running around the country?
Well, Wayne had a marvelous position on how to reduce the federal government back to constitutional levels. It's the first time I've ever heard anybody come up with an actual plan based in law that can work. And it's called impoundment. Day one, he's going to challenge the funding of all federal agencies that are not constitutionally mandated. And through impoundment, he doesn't have to spend the money. The president doesn't have to spend the money. He can impound it and force the court to decide whether or not he has to violate his oath of office, which is to defend and protect and sustain the Constitution, or violate that oath and let Congress say the Constitution doesn't exist anymore. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant solution because I don't think it'll ever go to court. But every president has asked for the veto when they had it all along. They've had it all along, but they don't want it.
Time. Okay, Chris?
I sincerely apologize, but could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. We have according to this questionnaire, doubled the number of FBI, BATF, Homeland Security, and so forth agents in the last few years. And what is your candidate's plan to do with all of those armed federal agents running around the country?
Well, Senator Gravel has come out and spoken against the military-industrial complex since he was in the Senate. I'll remind you, he filibustered, waged a one-man, 5-month filibuster on the floor of the Senate to force an end to the Vietnam draft. In addition, he read the Pentagon Papers, which detailed the United States government's basically misleading the public in our actions in Vietnam. He read those into the congressional record to make sure that they were put forth. As far as an actual plan to what to do with all these agents, again, I apologize, but I'm going to have to defer to the senator, but I would just make a point. Once again, the senator has been vehemently against the military-industrial complex and the way that it has a stranglehold on our democracy, and he will definitely expound on that once he gets here.
Mary?
Okay. Well, the armed federal agents are a very good target to reduce government spending. Many of them, I would say most of them, are not needed. And when you reduce government spending, the wonderful thing is that you increase prosperity. There's a graph in Healing Our World that shows if you look at all the countries of the world, you can actually predict how prosperous they're going to be, how high their GDP or GNP is going to be, by just simply looking at what percentage of that the government spends every year. So wealth creation is very, very tied to government spending. Slashing government spending at every place that you can creates more wealth in the country. And prosperity is what we need in order to really defend our security. Because when it comes time to defend that security with military or anything else, money, creativity is what we need. And that's what made us so successful in World War II. We were able to take an industrial economy and shift it over quickly to a military complex. Thank you.
George?
If elected, I will be the first president to have a computer in the Oval Office. That's because, well, it's true. That's because I need a computer to drive the presidential high-speed laser veto printer. There is a presidential block that is constitutional and valid, and that is the veto of the bill. Once the bill is signed into law, the notion of impoundment is just a George Bush presidential signing statement. It's a terrible idea. Ask how it will be used in the wrong hands, not the right hands. Having said that, all those federal agents, I'll ask Congress to cut. All those federal agents who've committed crimes, all those folks who wiretapped every phone call you've made for the last 8 years, those were felonies. And I will appoint a corps of special prosecutors to put everyone who did that into prison where they belong.
All right, Roger, last, speaking for Michael Jangosian.
Thank you. All very great answers and ideas and philosophies, all of which I'm going to defer to Mike later on, because it is a part of his entire message, so thank you.
Okay. See what did I just do?
I think it was Mark last. Did you start?
Mark started it. Did I start?
Yeah.
Mark started it. Back to you. You already started. Okay, the next one's to George. George, what is your position on nuclear energy?
There are two parts to that, and one is the weapons application, and one is the civilian energy application. The weapons application in practice has meant we have not had a major great power war in 60 years. It is a very unattractive solution, but hey, the real world tends to be like that. Ugly solutions sometimes give us the happy outcome that no one has died in nuclear warfare since 1945. Number two, civilian nuclear energy. The big obstacle to nuclear energy that may shut down bunches of our nuclear power plants very soon is nuclear waste disposal. That is a solved problem. I am putting on my WPI and MIT-trained physics doctorate. Nuclear waste disposal is solved. You put it underground, it's safe, and you can recover it later, and it's valuable even.
Okay, Mary?
Could you repeat the question, please?
What is your position on nuclear energy?
I think the marketplace should decide, and the marketplace did decide to some extent already. One of the reasons we don't have a lot of nuclear reactors in the U.S. is that the insurance costs were quite high, and so basically it wasn't economical to go ahead and build them. Now, of course, I suspect with all the regulations in the country that might change in a free market. And so that's how I would do it. I would simply let the marketplace decide. And of course, as part of that marketplace decision, insurance in case of a problem is very important. And if the insurance industry felt that nuclear power plants were not safe, they would not insure them, or the cost would be so high that it wouldn't be worth it to build them. So that is the marketplace regulating for our benefit.
Okay, Chris?
I would just like to second what Mary said on behalf of the Senator. He would very much, as far as civilian uses of nuclear energy, let the marketplace decide. I would also put forth, however, that when he was in the Senate, Senator Gravel was outspoken against ending testing in the North Pacific of nuclear weapons that had already been rendered obsolete, and the tests continued until he put forth legislation to make sure that those testing ended. So once again, as far as the civilian energy, he believes in letting the marketplace decide. He also believes that there is many other alternative sources of energy out there that would be much more efficient than nuclear power. And again, he will definitely expand on that when he comes in later.
Okay, Mark?
Well, I think I can speak in generalities what Wayne probably believes about energy in general, and that is he's for opening ANWR, getting rid of regulations and propping up oil companies and that sort of thing. But I honestly have no clues of where he stands on the nuclear issues, simply because we've never discussed it. It's just not been high on our list of things to refine. So I'll defer to him later in the campaign.
Okay, Roger, or if he goes in.
Thank you. Exactly. Very good ideas, Mary, and everybody else as well. Allowing the marketplace to decide and helping us break the stranglehold that coal and oil has on the world. Because there are a lot better alternative energy sources, including nuclear, that have to be considered, and they're available now. They're available now, and we've got to get those processes in place so people can get access to them, and we can start realizing that.
Okay. We'll start this one with Roger and go the other way. Do you support the fair tax, or if not, do you have some other tax reform plan?
This is why I don't run for office. I'm gonna, once again on that, I may sound like a broken record, but I will gladly defer that to Mike. Thank you.
And we do appreciate, by the way, that we have representatives here early in the day, and understand that later we will get elucidation. So it's not a cop-out. It was great to have our stand-ins here for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark.
Well, we do have on our website a very comprehensive two-part tax and cut spending proposal. The first being the impoundment. Now, I disagree with George. I don't think you could abuse that. If you say, I'm going to impound funds for unconstitutional stuff, I don't think that's abuse. But the trick is you have to cut spending. And if you cut spending dramatically, then you can institute an entirely different kind of tax system. And what we propose is it be done on a per capita basis, and there be 50 payers of taxes in the states. And let the states decide how they're going to allocate each individual share, be it a fair tax, flat tax, who cares? It's up to the state to figure that out. But if you've got a drastically reduced federal cost, the money necessary is minuscule by comparison to what you currently pay. So I don't think we're going to have a duplication of the education department, that sort of thing. You already have it.
Okay, Chris?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that the senator absolutely supports the fair tax. Now, of course, any change in the tax code would have to be coupled with a drastic reduction in spending as well as realignment of spending priorities. And again, that has to happen with any change to the tax system. But let's be fair here. The tax system is completely broken. But we can't get rid of it and replace it with nothing. That is anarchist, and that is absolutely unrealistic. It's time for the party to start thinking about realistic solutions. Is a fair tax an end-all? Perhaps not, but it is a start, and the senator completely supports the fair tax plan. Again, we have to look at realistic solutions to grow this party into a viable political force. And saying that we would get rid of the income tax and replace it with nothing, that is an unrealistic solution. So yes, once again, the senator wholeheartedly supports the fair tax.
Mary?
I believe that we can eliminate the income tax and replace it with nothing at all. All we have to do is cut spending back to what it was 10 years ago. And think about this for a minute. If we are advocating, we, the party of principle, who have been advocating this position that we can replace income tax with nothing for so many years, start advocating the fair tax, will people take us seriously anymore? Are we selling out? You know, one of the things that this whole campaign is about, I think, is the heart and soul of the party. And I think we change the whole way we're viewed if we are advocating a replacement tax, because we can't be serious about cutting spending if we're simply replacing one tax with another. So I definitely think that we can end the income tax and replace it with nothing at all. All we need to do is cut spending back to what it was 10 years ago, and we could easily do that. Of course, I believe in cutting it more.
I'm going to Washington, if elected, to cut government, give us a freer country with smaller government, not to give bureaucrats new ideas of new ways to empty your wallets, not to mention my wallet. That's not done by instituting a fair tax. The fair tax has two parts. One is a guaranteed national income under a funny name. That's socialism, and you can bet that program will grow a great deal. The second part is a uniform sales tax to replace the income tax. Question, why does capitalism work? It works because people can make long-range plans because they can reasonably assume the tax system is going to be reasonably stable. Anyone here have a Roth IRA? Hands? Anyone? Well, everyone with a Roth IRA, fair tax means you're going to be taxed one more time on all that money. That's totally unacceptable, and I won't support it.
We started about 5 minutes late. Do we want to... Go ahead for the other 5 minutes? Okay. Okay, let me see. Okay, this is probably a reasonable one. I'm going to differ from all of you on this one because I'm insane. Our national debt is currently $9.4 trillion and climbing. That means if I were to have a baby, the baby would be born owing over $30,000 to somebody in China, probably. and since only about 40% of us actually pay significant taxes in this country, that means all of our children are born probably owing close to $70,000 or $80,000 to somebody in maybe Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure. So, starting with Mary, she's figured out the pattern. Excellent. Okay.
I'm good for something.
Do you have a plan for dealing with the national debt? Because it exists.
Yes. Yes, I do. If we slash government spending, we will have a great increase in prosperity. In fact, I calculate that if we had a libertarian society, fully libertarian, we would have 8 to 20 times the wealth creation that we have today. Now, that's the difference between the space age and the stone age. That's huge. It's huge. And the only way, really, I can see to get rid of the national debt and actually pay it off without repudiating it is to start wealth creation on a big scale. So when I scale back government, that's going to happen. And then we will have extra wealth to pay off the debt without having to repudiate it, without having to inflate to get rid of it, and without having to tax our grandchildren with this $30,000 as soon as they're born. So that is the only way I see that we can get out of this debt without destroying ourselves. Liberty works, and liberty will work to solve this problem for us too.
Okay, Chris, how will your candidate deal with national debt?
Well, for the most part, I'm going to have to once again defer to, again, I'm sounding like a broken record too, but he will definitely be covering this. Just once again, anything that we talk about has to be coupled with a dramatic reduction in government spending and a realignment of our spending priorities. And again, the senator will definitely expand on that.
Again, we appreciate the stand-in.
Okay.
I don't know.
Mark, what's the plan?
I think the same thing, cut the spending, but Wayne's the only one who said he's going to cut the government as well. If you get rid of the income tax, you got rid of a horrible thing, and I completely concur with that. But that doesn't cut government, because the bureaucracy is still there, and that's 99% of my frustration with the world right now is dealing with bureaucrats. And I'm sure most small business people share that kind of sentiment. So if you get rid of the Department of Education and you save $50–60 billion, then when it goes back to the state, are they going to replace the Department of Education at the federal level with a bigger one at the state level? I think that's impractical to assume that they're going to do that. Okay? So with impoundment and with the tax situation that we're suggesting,
Time on that.
You've got an option that'll work.
All right, and Roger.
Once again, I will defer, and I apologize for that, but if you're all here after dinner, Mike will expand greatly on that, and many other questions. Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
How many of you will be here for the dinner thing? Or I should say, won't be here? Maybe it'll be easier. Okay, good. So we'll be redundant.
There we go.
Did George answer that question?
Okay.
George didn't answer that question.
I was waiting. Yes, I have to answer the question.
You're right. I'm sorry, George. I lost track.
That's my question.
I confused myself. It's just awesome. Here.
Number one, communication. Message to the American people. A baby is born. Ghost of Uncle Sam appears. Hands her a bill for 30 G's, her cut of the national debt. She takes her first breath. Ghost of Uncle Sam appears again. This time it's 130 G's. It's her cut of the unfunded liabilities. Now you know why every baby in the country is born and immediately starts screaming, because they know what we've done to them. It's true. Having said that, what do we do about the national debt and the other money situation? National debt, it's like a house mortgage. You can pay it off at put in 0.1% a month towards capital, and in 30 years it's gone. Number two, biggest cut to make, Department of Defense by 3/4. We spend more money than almost everyone else in the world put together. And they're our friends, almost all of them. That's silly.
Okay, more or less back on track. We have 5 candidates represented. We have 6 total. Hopefully Daniel will be here this evening. I've allowed 10 minutes for 3 candidates in the afternoon and 3 candidates in the evening to make 3 minutes of saying whatever they want to say. I don't care. We'll let them say it, and then we'll go outside and talk about it. Yes, Cindy?
But since we want to hear from the candidates directly, we may increase that evening
Well,
time
okay,
because we
that's...
don't have a 3-to-3 split in it.
Well, okay,
We don't want to hear from the candidates.
we'll talk to Ken about that, whether or not we can increase the number of...
But I'm saying
Remind.
that we're not going
Our
to assign those
parents.
3 minutes to the
All right.
candidates.
So here's the thing. I'm going to pick. I will allow up to 3 of you to speak right now because we have to go into the business meeting.
I'll defer.
Who would like to speak now? Have 2 people. You guys want to fight over it? Or you want me to pick?
Give them each 4 minutes.
George,
Your choice.
Doesn't matter.
go ahead.
George, go.
Go ahead, George.
Fellow libertarians, we have wonderful opportunities out there just waiting for us. John McCain talks about a century in Iraq. Obama, Clinton talk about socializing medicine one way or the other. Just think, Republicans, a century of death. Democrats, a century of taxes. We libertarians say, death, taxes. We've got a better solution. The libertarian solution, peace, prosperity, liberty. That's the message we carry to the American people. Now, we have a range of opinions in our party. We have some people who are pretty close to light Republicans. We have some people who are radical anarchists. We have the people up in front of you here. I'm a middle-of-the-road guy. My message is, talk about issues that Americans care about. Give them answers that will bring them in, not send them screaming in terror.
That's right.
That's a radical idea. And do things to build the party. If I'm your nominee, I will be spending my time traveling the country, campaigning with our other candidates. That's your candidates here in Indiana. That's my good friend Ken Blevins up in New Hampshire. He's running for Senate against John Sununu. That's the John Sununu whose campaign is significantly funded by the Bob Barr Leadership PAC while Bob was on the LNC. But I will be there supporting our candidates and building our party. What do I have to offer in terms of a campaign? I'm already campaigning. Radio ads, AdWords ads. We've had 27 million impressions. Vote Libertarian. Get Uncle Sam out of your bedroom and out of your pocketbook. I've got direct mail. I have 100,000 in the bank ready to go if I get the nomination. I have state coordinators across the country. And I have this message to all my volunteers. You know, campaign's going to end in November no matter what. Our party will continue, our party will grow. Stay with us, help build the party, because that is the most important thing a presidential campaign can do. Show the flag, show the American people that our libertarian message is incredibly better than the messages of our crazy opponents. Well, it really is, isn't it?
Certainly is.
By the way, how many of you are going to be running for office this year? Hands? I'm looking forward to campaigning with every one of you on a road trip of Indiana. I hope we can make it work. So my message is, I'm going to talk about sensible issues. I'm going to build a party. I am ready to go if you give me the nomination. So give me your nomination, make me your candidate, and I promise you, I will give you the campaign we've always dreamed of and never quite had.
Mary?
I would like to call your attention to page 43 of Short Answers. where the question and answer in question is found. And, you know, Mark said that I said in this answer that a contract exists. I'm quoting him exactly. That I said pedophilia was okay. I invite you to go to the back and my table and look at page 43 and see for yourself that these words are not there. Now, what was really disappointing about this whole situation is that last weekend in Washington State, when we were asked who we wanted for our VP candidate, only Wayne Allen Root named a name, and he named me. So you would think, if he read this week something I had written that gave him a question, he would have called me and invited me to explain it to him. But he didn't. And you know what was disappointing about that? In Ohio, on the forum, Wayne Allen Root was accused of, shall we say, misrepresenting forum results. And he ran out to me as I was leaving and pleaded with me not to judge him until I heard his side of the story, which of course I did. And I'm disappointed that when the situations were reversed, he did not come to me first before he condemned me and asked me to withdraw. But, you know, I don't expect an apology from Wayne. I'm not asking for one. He made a mistake that any neophyte running in the Libertarian Party could make. Because when we enter the party, let's face it, most of us were not fully embracing the Libertarian ideal. It takes a while. And so I understand where he's coming from, and I'm not angry about it. But one thing I would like to call your attention to. Whoever we nominate for this election is going to be a party leader from then on. New candidates and new entrance into the party will look up to this person for an example. And so I ask you, do you want, as an example, someone who is divisive, or do you want someone who's going to unify the party? Do you want someone who is going to try to bring people together, to work together as a team? Someone who is understanding and forgiving? Or do you want someone who feels that the way to handle a situation is not to talk it out, but to simply judge and condemn? I leave that in your hands. There are many of us here who I think would qualify on either side of that ledger. And that's the thing I think that is most important in this whole issue. Now, I would like to say one more thing. My colleague George and I have had a lot of fun on the campaign trail here, and he brought up a point in the immigration area that I'd like to address. He said that we can't have open borders as long as we have a welfare state. And I agree, but I think the solution's different. I think that we need to get rid of the welfare, not the open borders policy. Thank you.
Let's give all of our candidates and representatives a big hand.